Thank you all very much for being here tonight. Good evening and welcome to the College Ed Association's 113th Annual Conference. I am Mariët Omogbai, the Executive Director and CEO of CAA. And on behalf of the Board of Directors and staff and our members, thank you for being with us to kick off this year's program. Whether you are joining in person here at the New York Hilton Midtown tonight or via live stream, we are thrilled you are here with us. Before we begin, I must first acknowledge that this conference is being held on the traditional lands of the Lenape people. I'd like to pay respect to their elders, both past and present. As I said last year, though land acknowledgements have become increasingly controversial, personally, I don't consider taking a moment to recognize the stewards of the land upon which we stand merely performative. Naming the rightful stewards is a crucial step toward overcoming injustices committed against indigenous populations, specifically by combating indigenous erasure. I'll also like to acknowledge the sponsors that have made this year's in-person convening possible. AMA Journal of Ethics, Blake Art Materials, the Dedalus Foundation, the Getty Foundation, Intellect Press, Joan Mitchell Foundation, J. Storr, the Milton and Sally Avery Arts Foundation, Rutledge, Taylor and Francis, Sotheby's Institute of Art, and the Terra Foundation. Thanks also to our 63 exhibitors in this year's Book and Trade Fair, including those from Belgium, Canada, China, Germany, Hong Kong, Mexico, United Kingdom, and Ukraine. Yes. We hope all conference attendees will visit the fair in the Rhinelander Gallery on the second floor at some point this week. Today is the would-be 100th birthday of Joan Mitchell, who in 1988 was the first ever CAA recipient of the CAA Distinguished Artist Award for Lifetime Achievement. This Friday's annual artist interviews, featuring Wendy Red Star and Martha Rosler, is sponsored in part by the Joan Mitchell Foundation as part of their centennial celebration. And we are happy to join them in honoring Mitchell's birthday this evening. I am proud to report that the CAA 113th Annual Conference boasts the most sessions we've hosted since the pandemic, with over 325 sessions, workshops, and events. Due to your feedback when we last convened in New York in 2023, we have resumed the sale of day passes, which will hopefully expand local attendance at this conference. We continue to balance the desire to convene in person with our need to expand global reach and reduce environmental impact. This year, we have a selection of exciting hybrid sessions, as well as robust open access programming, including special sessions produced by the CAA Services to Artists Committee and CAA Student and Emerging Professionals Committee. Just today, the Student and Emerging Professionals Committee held an incredible session, A Guide to All Things CAA, chaired by CAA lifetime member Susan Altman, who was joined by an incredible panel, including past President Anne Elizabeth Schrader and current professional board member Caroline Jean Martin. Thank you to the committee and session participants for this invaluable orientation to CAA and our conference. I also want to highlight that for the second year in a row, the Services to Artists Committee has curated and CAA staff has produced an off-site exhibition. This year's exhibition, Vantage Point, is held at the Sotheby's Institute of Art, just 15 minutes walk away from here. I strongly encourage you to RSVP using the form in the online conference schedule, as you can visit this incredible exhibition. The opening reception will be held tomorrow evening. CAA conferences continue to feature leading-edge scholarship and art in the field. And in the midst of much turmoil in the world, I am so happy we are together in this moment, united in our passion for art, scholarship, and advocacy. I am pleased to introduce the President of the CAA Board of Directors, Dr. Denise Baxter, who will begin the evening by announcing the 2025 Awards for Distinction. Before becoming Board President this past May, Denise was a member of the CAA Education Committee and chair of its Professional Practices Committee. She was formerly Associate Dean in the College of Visual Arts and in the Toulouse Graduate School at University of North Texas, where she's a professor of art history. I am proud to call Denise my partner in leadership at CAA. Denise?
I'm pleased to have the opportunity to announce the recipients of the CAA 2025 Awards for Distinction. With these awards, CAA honors the achievements of those who have made incredible contributions to the visual arts field. I know not everyone receiving awards this year is present, but for those of you who are, please stand to be recognized when I announce your name. The Art Journal Award is presented to Sarah Callahan for When the Dust Has Settled, What Was the Archival Turn, Is It Still Turning?, which appeared in the spring 2024 issue. The Alfred H. Barr Jr. Award is presented to authors of an especially distinguished catalog in the history of art. This year's recipients are Emerson Boyer and Anne-Lise Dumas for Camille Claudel, published in 2023. Yay! The Alfred H. Barr Jr. Award for Smaller Museums, Libraries, Collections, and Exhibitions is presented to Joe Baker and Laura Ego for the catalog Never Broken, Visualizing Lenape Histories from 2024. The first Frank Jewett Mather Award for Art Criticism is presented to Philip Glahn and Carrie Levine for the book The Future is Present, Art, Technology, and the Work of Mobile Image, published by MIT Press in 2024. The second award goes to Grant H. Kester for Beyond the Sovereign Self, Aesthetic Autonomy and the Avant-Garde for Socially Engaged Art, published by Duke University Press in 2023. The Charles Rufus Morey Book Award is presented to Janet Catherine Burlow for Not Native American Art, Fakes, Replicas, and Invented Traditions, University of Washington Press, 2023. The Arthur Kingsley Porter Prize has been awarded to Monica Bravo for her article, Mineral Analogs, Carlton Watkins Photographs and the Gold Standard, in the Art Bulletin in November of 2024. The CAA AIC Award for Distinction in Scholarship and Conservation is presented to Kimberly Muir and Jeline Nadolny Kimberly Mayer has made major contributions to scholarship with the working methods and materials of 19th and 20th century artists. She is committed to making her findings accessible to the public through the Art Institute of Chicago, where she is research conservator for paintings in the Department of Conservation and Science. Jolene Nadolny, who passed away in December 2023, was a pioneer in the field of technical art history. Her PhD thesis focused on techniques and uses of gilded relief decoration of polychrome sculpture. Some of the other areas in which she made major contributions are the history of early scientific analysis of painting materials and technical art histories. Her untimely death came at a time when she had decided to return to more academic studies. The 2025 Artist Award for a Distinguished Body of Work is presented to Arnold J. Kemp. Known for exploring themes of identity, abstraction, and cultural history, Kemp often integrates text and materiality to examine the nuances of race, power, and memory. His practice reflects a deep commitment to innovation and a critical dialogue with both historical and modern artistic movements. The Distinguished Artist Award for Lifetime Achievement is presented to Joan Jonas. Joan Jonas is a pioneering artist and one of the most influential figures in performance and video art. Since the 1960s, Jonas has been at the forefront of experimental art, pushing the boundaries of storytelling and visual expression. Renowned for an innovative use of multimedia and her profound impact on contemporary art, Jonas continues to inspire generations of artists as both a creator and educator. The Distinguished Lifetime Achievement Award for Writing on Art is presented to Carol Armstrong. Her multiple books continue to reconceive French modernism, and through her essays, she has engaged as a crucial source on photography. Her revisionist projects have coalesced into an extraordinary reinvention of her own form, the manner in which one writes the history of art. The Distinguished Teaching of Art Award recognizes Bruce Jenkins. With a career spanning academia and museum work, he has contributed significantly to the study and preservation of experimental film and now shares his expertise as an educator, inspiring new generations to engage with the rich history and evolving practices of media arts. The Distinguished Teaching of Art History Award recognizes Michael Leha. His teaching builds on groundbreaking research into the visual cultures of the United States during the 19th and 20th centuries. Letters from former students, some of whom may be here today, attest to the collaborative classrooms he creates for undergraduates, the rigorous yet affirmative graduate supervision, and the consistency of his support during their subsequent careers. Thank you. The 2025 Distinguished Feminist Awards are presented to Monica Mayer and Karen Cordero. For nearly 50 years, Monica Mayer's work has held a monumental significance within feminist art, both in Mexico and internationally. Mayer's practice is best represented with the essential social practice performance piece, El Tendedero, I know, it's horrible. El Tendedero, the clothesline, first installed in 1978 in Mexico City's Museum of Modern Art. Mayer's work provides a model for feminist artistic practice that decenters the individual and develops institutions and archives intended to keep alive the past feminist activism in the arts. Karen Cordero has had essential roles in contributing to and advancing and developing feminist art historical studies of Mexican art. A native New Yorker, Cordero began studying Mexican folk art in 1982 and later took a course with Monica Mayer. Since then, Cordero has served for over 3 decades at Mexico's Universidad Iberoamericana. Cordero's influence among an entire generation of students in Mexico has even been termed the Cordero effect. The 2025 Excellence in Diversity Award is presented to Arturo Lindsay. an artist, cultural investigator, educator whose work is informed by African spirituality and aesthetics in the Americas. Most recently, he completed a documentary film on the Congos of Panama, descendants of Africans who escaped enslavement during the colonial period. The Michael Auerbach Fellowship for Excellence in Visual Art, awarded annually to a CAA member teaching studio art, is presented to Eli Craven, an interdisciplinary artist whose research resides in the critical investigation of the image and its relationship to ideologies of sexuality, desire, and death. Eli is currently assistant professor of photography and related media in the Patty and Rusty Roof School of Design, Art, and Performance at Purdue University. Jeff Beebe, Chloe Crawford, and Natalia Mijatovic were all selected for Auerbach honorable mentions. The Professional Development Fellowship in Art History is presented to Özge Karagöz, PhD candidate in the Department of Art History at Northwestern University, whose areas of specialization include intertwined histories of post-Ottoman Turkish and Soviet art, and their localized understandings developed through cross-cultural exchange, interdisciplinary collaborations, and anti-imperialist critique. Megha Balakrishnan received an honorable mention for the Professional Development Fellowship in Art History. The Professional Development Fellowship in Visual Art is awarded to Autumn Ahn, whose work forms a response to her family's history of assimilation, questioning power dynamics attached to representation, racial identity, and language. Savannah Jackson and Kelly Booz received honorable mentions for the Professional Development Fellowship in Visual Art. Congratulations to all of the 2025 awardees, and thank you for your work. In my address here, I'd like to begin with gratitude by thanking the award recipients. Their fine research and creative activity demonstrate who and why we are as an association. Thank you as well to all those who made nominations. Thank you to those who served on the review committees for these nominations. And thank you to those who have made our time here at Convocation and at the conference as a whole possible. The association's membership, its professional committees, the conference committee, publications committees, fellow board members, and the association's small but mighty staff. Thank you. Remember, the awards, the conference content, the association, that is all because of you, the association's membership. If there's someone that you know should be recognized, if there's a topic that needs to be covered at the conference, please put that in the proposals, because we are a member-driven, purpose-driven association with a mission to promote the visual arts writ large in their understanding. It's for this reason I am, and the board as a whole is, so grateful to have a partner in leadership to navigate this period like CAA's Executive Director, Omogbai. Her varied work, from experience in leadership and systems of higher education, as a museum director, as a former historic trust chair, and working in a Big Four accounting firm, positioned to help us navigate this period of precarity for the association. Thank you for your partnership, Meme. In terms of partnerships, I would be remiss not to recognize that CAA exists within an ecosystem: higher education, visual arts and design practitioners, museums, galleries, nonprofits, art organizations, foundations, and all those who pay for art in the broadest possible terms. CAA benefits from our ACLS partners and the shared wisdom our sister learned societies in the humanities and interpretive social sciences bring. And if you don't follow ACLS on social media, Joy Connolly has just announced she'll be doing an advocacy newsletter regularly, and that is an important source for us. Then there are our affiliates. You are likely members of interconnected circles of associations, and it may be through one of those that you came to CAA. And I've, at various times, been involved with A2RU, ASEX, the Feminist Art Project, FATE, HECA, ICFED, and AEA, each having its own focus, but all sharing some common cause. And if you can, please come by the Affiliate Society's meet and greet on Friday afternoon. I'm grateful now more than ever for CAA's partners, because in our various capacities, CAA, its membership, and all of its partners are experiencing, well, existential threats. It's not new news that our ecosystem of the visual arts, humanities, and higher education faces systemic threats. Enrollment declines, devaluation of the arts, before and in addition to our currently federally constructed chaos. Indeed, there is so much new news that it can become overwhelming. From the specific vantage point of impact on the visual arts and design, I'm particularly keeping my eye on structural and systemic changes of the sort that tend to outlive individuals, both what they are and how they're being enforced. Two examples. The first comes from my home state of Texas in SB 17, under which universities may not establish or maintain an office division or other unit of DEI. My university and other publics in the state now have mandated compliance hotlines to report your concerns of noncompliance with SB 17. And while the university's legal counsel has indicated that an instructor may discuss race, ethnicity, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, or related topics in their classroom, so long as such discussion is specifically associated with the academic course instruction, course syllabi are currently under review by university compliance. We'll need to be vigilant as to the implications for art history, and design instruction. In Florida, SB 266 bars core general education courses that distort significant historical events or include a curriculum that teaches identity politics. Humanities core courses in particular must include selections from the Western canon. It'll be crucial to see how general education revisions may be enacted in other states and how the broad scope of the visual arts is considered in these debates. As we know, student access to education in the visual arts and design is inequitable across the EC-12 environment, and many students receive their introduction to art history as a discipline through a general education course. To that end, I encourage you all to attend Robert Townsend's presentation on Friday. Townsend is Director of Humanities, Arts, and Culture Programs, and co-director of the Humanities Indicators Project at the American Academy of Arts and Science. And he'll be leading a discussion on the state of the field based upon the Mellon-funded Arts and Humanities National Survey data. It will take place following the business meeting on Friday, starting around 12:30 in the Trianon Ballroom. In short, we all need to be attentive to impacts on the visual arts broadly, not just in our own backyards. If you work at a private institution, what about the public's? If you have a tenure system job, what are the situations for contingent faculty, the prospects for your students? At the same time as threats are real, I urge you to take a moment for joy. Take pride and comfort in our member-driven association. Engage with the amazing conference content. We have hundreds of sessions and thousands of registrants. Many of you are here because you have organized or are presenting in sessions, and the conference app will help keep you organized. Take joy from your colleagues. There's something extremely important about coming together physically as a community, being able to share coffee and your experiences at your home institutions, to catch up with your mentors and mentees, to learn about new opportunities and to hear about the new projects of your friends and colleagues who are in special cases as supportive as a chosen family. The conference is a safe space for the art and design community. We're in New York. Go see art. Take advantage of your badge benefits. This is part of the CAA conference experience too. There are a goodly number of New York City museums, including the Guggenheim, who are providing complimentary admission to conference attendees. Take advantage. Finally, take action. Speak about the humanities and the arts to whomever and from whatever perspective. A recent article in the Chronicle pointed out that with decreased course offerings comes a loss of variety and depth on campus that threatens the very nature of the undergraduate experience. particularly among institutions that serve rural, non-white, and first-gen students, and those from modest family wealth. As those students head to jobs and adult lives, the loss of exposure to these humanistic disciplines may have resounding implications for society, the workplace, and their day-to-day lives. To this, and I will try not to sound too apocalyptic, I would say that the implications are also for democracy itself, and they are real and at hand. So we must actively make our case. If the necessary language for your audience is instrumental, let's go there. If the demand is career readiness, we can do that. In the article in the Chronicle, Carlson and Laff present the example of nursing students needing more than biology and chemistry, namely the visual and liberal arts, to be equipped to engage with the whole human. As my board colleague Laura Evans regularly points out, art history PhDs use the skills that they develop in their degrees to great success in meaningful work outside of the academy and the museum, for example, in our allied nonprofits and granting agencies. Perhaps we could do a better job of communicating with employers, families, and students. And perhaps we can think of our students aspiring to jobs other than, well, ours. Yet speak as well of the essential. The visual arts are essential to living a meaningful life. Engaging with the arts is part of what makes our humanity and is an integral part of the critical and general, dare I say it, good. So in addition to speaking, join a CAA committee, run for the board, shape this and your affiliate societies. For those of you for whom this is a possibility, work with your faculty governance structures, work with your local and regional arts associations, and do your work, your research, and your creative practice. This is our value. CAA promotes originality and excellence in the creation, interpretation, and teaching of visual art. Remember, we started with our awards for distinction. Be a great artist, designer, curator, arts leader, scholar. Be a great colleague. Be a great member of our professional association by doing. We can survive and maybe even find ways to thrive through our collaborative and collective efforts. And with that, it's my pleasure to invite back to the microphone our CAA Executive Director, Mariët Omogbai. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise. You see why I love her. So here we all are again, gathered together, assuring the 113th year continuity of CAA's annual convening, despite all of the historic impediments we've overcome to this point. And now we are once again in a historical moment that has called quite a bit into question. But pressing on and convening like we are this week ensures the continued protection, promotion, and forward progress of our culture. There is no other organization that produces this high volume of innovative research, practice, and dialogue in the visual arts field. This is what CAA does for the culture. Remembering why we are here and what we contribute in the light is the light in the darkness right now. And these convenings have illuminated darker times for over a century. As this is the one time of year we consistently convene in person, as the Executive Director and CEO of this organization, I like to provide a CAA State of the Union, as it were. It is particularly complicated to do so this year, however. CAA members and staff have much to be proud of, despite the many challenges we face daily. In the past year, in addition to a fantastic annual conference in Chicago, we were also able to deliver 2 summer publishing webinars spearheaded by the Art Bulletin Editor-in-Chief, Christy Anderson, and produced by CAA staff that were the 2 most well-attended programs outside of the conference in nearly a decade. We continue to award numerous grants to fund various projects, publications, travel, professional development, and educational experiences. We have received a candid platinum seal of transparency on GuideStar, which will help garner much-needed resources by further establishing legitimacy with institutional funders and individual donors alike. We've worked to deepen our relationship and plan future collaborations with our affiliated societies. And our committees have seen an unprecedented number of applications this year from a new generation of folks inspired by their dynamic output. Committees have been busy doing so much, including updating standards and guidelines for the field, curating lists of must-see gallery shows and exhibitions, and producing a popular podcast series that we are now proud to say fosters cross-committee collaboration. With recent hires, we've audited our association management system and have made strides to address systemic issues so we can bring our members a more seamless membership journey, along with other refinements to our outdated infrastructure, so that CAA can henceforth keep up with the times and be better responsive to the needs of the field. We are also proud that our journal, Open, just 2 weeks ago, published a bilingual interview to start the year. In 2024, our journal was downloaded 49,000 times, while the Art Bulletin was downloaded 68,000 times, exceeding pre-pandemic numbers. The CAA113th Annual Conference, this conference, received the most submissions for sessions than we've received since before the pandemic. We enter our third in-person conference since 2020, which responsibly expanded hybridity to align with our commitment to expanding accessibility and global reach while balancing our desire and need to convene on-site. CAA welcomes 8 new participants in the CAA Getty International Program and 4 program alumni. Getty participants, if you are in the room, please stand to be acknowledged. I saw a couple of you. Thank you. And now, in its 14th year, CAA continues to refine the program, and it remains a particularly special component of CAA conferences. CAA 113 Getty participants hail from Argentina, Bosnia and Herzegovina, China, Egypt, Greece, Lithuania, Malaysia, Mongolia, the Republic of Singapore, and Ukraine. Clement Akpan gave a compelling keynote address yesterday on myths surrounding decolonization and repatriation during the pre-colonial conference of the Getty Colloquium. Our registration target for 2025 was about 2,500 registrants, and by the 28th, and even today, we have by far exceeded that. We have already exceeded these expectations, and we expect to exceed well past 3,000. We are not only outperforming 2023 and 2024 conferences, but current registration numbers are on par with pre-pandemic numbers. With nearly 1,500 participants, 63 exhibitors in the book and trade fair who still see the inherent value in coming to CAA, and with registrants from over 54 countries across the globe, I couldn't be more excited for this year's convening. Many registrants have communicated that they are excited and even relieved to participate in a conference during this tumultuous period. After a century, CAA conferences remain a place for leading scholarship, collaboration, and dialogue, even in the most challenging of times. Despite such achievements, A State of the Union remains complicated because I'm cognizant of the fact that the transitions in leadership across the globe and fears surrounding funding pauses have stressed the ecosystem of CA constituencies in countless ways. As I stand here right now, there were conference participants who were impeded from boarding flights and those who had their visa appointments abruptly canceled, preventing them from attending. While CA staff has tirelessly supported these individuals to help them participate in conference regardless of extenuating circumstances, this is just the beginning, and the coming weeks will undoubtedly reveal new challenges and stresses. It is for this reason that, as your board president alluded in her speech, we really must unite right now if we are going to survive this. Even with the unique challenges presented by our current moment, CAA has been vulnerable for years. We're in a stable financial position insofar as we're living within our means, but that doesn't mean we're in as strong a financial and membership position as is ideal for an organization that has been in existence for over 113 years. The consequences of this include having a lean staff, most of whom are one-person departments, and limited capacity and resources for extended services and programming at a time when our individual members are in serious need. I reported last year that we received an unprecedented number of support grant applications and could only afford to fund 25% of them. This year, we received even more, yet we could only fund 15% of that total number. We've been fortunate, nevertheless, to have amazing funding partners, but the landscape in recent years has intensified our need for increased resources. So what's actionable here? We need every person who engages with CAA to commit to building a united front and contributing to finding solutions, because each and every one of us have a stake here. CAA is an umbrella visual arts organization, and that gives us unique power, both creatively and in terms of there being power in numbers. One of the complexities of being an umbrella organization, though, is that we have so many different constituencies, and sometimes those constituencies have competing needs. We want to hear from you, and we want to understand your needs so we can organize and strategize to ultimately meet them. But in the meantime, I implore you to resist a scarcity mentality. Acknowledging one constituency or providing resources for them is not robbing from another. Preserving and serving each segment of our population is to the benefit of the entire population. As Denise mentioned, after the annual business meeting on Friday, we'll be joined by Rob Townsend. And he will be presenting reports, indicators of report he has. Rob will be presenting independently generated data based on Mellon Foundation-funded survey of department chairs. The data will give further insight into the true state of our landscape. Data can be compiled and analyzed from various vantage points. Thus, independently generated data and the implicit integrity of that data is so important for us as a learned society to interrogate. And I invite all of you to join us for this presentation and discussion. We need your collective voices at the table. I want to acknowledge up front that that data will not present every segment of our population. But I ask that you join us with the intention of looking through the prism of how this affects you as well and contribute to productive conversation. Your feedback will help frame comparable opportunities, even if this data is not specifically related to you. CAA constituents may have needs that sometimes seem in direct conflict with each other, but the hard truth here is that any visible fracture renders us all vulnerable. We are no longer just facing existential threats because of the state of the field, department closures, agentification, though all of these things have contributed in recent years to why learned societies are losing members and funding. The problem now is even more complex. There are forces with an ethos antithetical to our mission, forces that wish to erode academic and artistic freedom. This may seem grim, but I find strength in this. Working together, I know this is a fight we can win. We need unity, collaboration. We need partnership with you. We all need to give each other grace as we determine, amid global chaos, the best ways to forge ahead and make progress to protect the very reasons we are all together tonight. Over the past few months, we have had a lot of conversations with people in the CA community who feel paralyzed, who can do little more than lick their wounds in the face of overwhelming circumstances. But history teaches us that the most difficult times tend to be the most creative. At a societal inflection point at the height of stress, pressure, and yes, even paralysis, innovation is born. I started this evening by underscoring how our convening serves as lights in the darkness. I like to end my remarks by quoting Paul Skiff, who worked with CAA in various capacities for over 25 years. Paul said the following in a recent all-staff meeting, and it brought a lot into focus. He said, "I feel commitment to this organization. After all these years, I have a kind of macro view of CAA, that it is a major international organization that contributes and determines the direction of scholarship and creativity. That may sound expansive, but that's my view of it. There's no other visual arts-oriented organization that contributes and determines the path forward for this kind of scholarship, research, and practice that supports higher education in this way. Whether you are a professor, an artist, a designer, an affiliate, or a staff member working at CAA, there is a kind of sacred calling, and despite many challenges, it is that calling which drives us and keeps us in a healthy situation moving forward." You see, I agree with Paul wholeheartedly. And in the spirit of his words, I issue this call to action to everyone listening tonight. Find a way to unite around the central conviction that art matters, scholarship matters, higher education matters, and join with us to preserve and protect our mission. During the darkest times, the brightest minds must be leveraged. We need you to partner with us to interpret what CA can do, even with limited resources. Your partnership and creativity are essential. We know you've contributed a lot so much. We need your help given the kinds of threats CAA, the field, and higher education are facing. There is a danger in losing our identity unless someone plays a role in our sustainability. Everyone needs to play a role in our sustainability. Spread the word. Together, I know we can ensure that the value and power of art and scholarship endures, and will come out the other side of this stronger and better positioned to face anything that comes. Thank you. And now I'd like to call to the podium Dr. Lara M. Evans, CAA's Vice President for Annual Conference. Dr. Evans is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. She is an art historian specializing in Native American art and a curator, and the Vice President of Programs at First Peoples Fund, a Native arts and culture nonprofit with programming nationwide. Lara?
OCO, hello. It is my pleasure to introduce the 113th CAA Annual Conference Convocation keynote speaker, Dr. Mariët Westermann. Dr. Westermann is a producer of art historical knowledge and also a producer of knowledge about arts infrastructure across multiple domains, as well as a contributor to the creation and operation of arts infrastructure. A historian of the Netherlands, an art historian of the art of the Netherlands, Dr. Westermann has authored numerous books, articles, and exhibition essays on Dutch art and artists, museums, and the state and future of higher education. She was the lead curator catalog author of Art and Home, Dutch Interiors in the Age of Rembrandt, shown at the Denver Art Museum and the Newark Museum, and served as a curatorial consultant and essayist for the National Gallery of Art's presentation of Jan Steen, painter and storyteller, in partnership with the Rijksmuseum Amsterdam. On behalf of the Mellon Foundation, Dr. Westermann commissioned and published with Roger Schoenfeld and Liam Sweeney 2 critical research studies on staff diversity in the museum sector. Westermann serves on the boards of ALIF, the International Alliance for the Protection of Heritage in Conflict Areas, the Educational Testing Service, and the Rijksmuseum, and chairs the Scholar Rescue Fund of the Institute of International Education. Westermann served as Executive Vice President at the Mellon Foundation, as a faculty member and director at NYU Institute of Fine Arts, as Associate Director of Research and Academic Programs at the Clark Institute, and as a faculty member at Rutgers University. She is a graduate, magna cum laude, of Williams College and holds master's and PhD degrees in the history of art from NYU's Institute of Fine Arts. Dr. Mariët Westermann is the director and CEO of the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum and Foundation, directing its flagship institution in New York, overseeing the foundation and the Peggy Guggenheim Collection in Venice, and providing collaborative leadership, working with the director of the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao and the project director for the future Guggenheim Abu Dhabi. Please welcome Dr. Mariët Westermann to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you very much, Lara, for the kind introduction, and Meme and Denise and Lara for inviting me to address the great CAA community, and a great community it is. I have always valued what the College Art Association does and what it represents, about which you heard much already today, even though, of course, we are known to be a disputatious little family from time to time. I especially value CAA's enduring belief that art and art history, artists and art historians belong under the same big tent with a whole lot of other arts professionals and advocates. And I also value CAA's longstanding belief and really commitment to welcoming people and ideas from around the world. And you just heard that in Meme's recitation of who are here with us. And these values, these international and inclusive values, the connection of art and art history and other disciplines, these values seem especially critical to maintain today. Now, Meme therefore asked me to speak about my experiences of art history and its institutions as inherently global and local. And I'm delighted to do so because it speaks to me, this topic. Like any human product or endeavor, art has the potential to divide us. We know that. But above all, art has extraordinary powers to connect us to each other and to help us understand our social and personal conditions in ways that aren't already immediately verbal or mathematical. And the organizations and communities that draw on art as such a vital resource for our human lives have been central to my life as an art historian, an educator, and now an unlikely museum director. So here goes. 30 years ago, I gave my first paper at CAA in 1995. And that experience, thank you, that experience stands out to me clear as the winter sky in San Antonio that day. I remember how excited I was to be speaking among art historians whom I mostly knew only from reading them. And I remember how nervous I was. And to be honest, I feel somewhat similarly this evening, given all the people I know who gave this talk before. Now, I was especially nervous to give that talk then because Hank Millen, the founding dean of the Center for Advanced Study in the Visual Arts, where I was then a predoctoral fellow, had given me a stern diagnosis of my rehearsal at CASA. You have an interesting topic, he said, but you should have done 3 things that you did not do. First, you should always state clearly what you are going to do and tell us your conclusion in advance. Then, you should do what you said you were going to do. And finally, in your conclusion, you need to say it again. I figured that Hank, whom I admired a lot, knew what to do with 20 minutes, so I said, okay, so I should divide my talk in 3 sections. Yes, he said. And oh, never use the first person. Over the years, I haven't followed these directions so precisely, but I do almost always talk in 3s, like the French. And so I will try to follow his lead today and say, first of all, that this speech will reflect on, first, on the genre of the convocation address at CAA. The listener will then come along on the speaker's journey through the expanding field of art history and higher education over more than 3 decades. And the address will conclude with a few thoughts on, my new assignment at a resolutely international art museum in a moment of what seems like deglobalization. Part 1, the CAA address. I also remember San Antonio in 1995 so well because it was the first time I attended CAA Convocation. I went to hear the keynote speaker, Linda Schiele, a scholar of Mayan art and anthropology, whom I did not know. But a few years earlier, Sam Edgerton, a professor from Williams College, whom I had invited to speak when I was a graduate student at the Institute of Fine Arts, he had told me about her. I had asked him to speak about his most recent work on Giotto and perspective, which was his expertise. But over dinner afterwards, he spoke most enthusiastically about his conversion to the study of Mesoamerican art. And he explained that he could only have entered the field because Linda Schiele had managed to decode the visual language of Mayan hieroglyphs in the 1970s. Until those discoveries, Mayan glyphs were thought to be somewhat random marks of copying by an innocent people who had no sense of history. But Linda and her fellow scholars, Sam told me, in short order discovered that the Mayans, in fact, the Maya had written dynastic history, spanning at the time known to be at least 4 centuries. And the writings that Linda had decoded laid bare a complex, in fact often warlike culture, capable at the same time of great feats of art and architecture. This story riveted me. Since childhood, I have been curious about deep time and how you can see into it by peering at the night sky like an astronomer or looking deep underground like an archaeologist. And so I went to hear, this is Sam, of course, a little snapshot of Sam Edgerton, who left us sadly recently. And we can forget about Kubler for a minute and go over to Linda Schiele. I went to hear Linda, and I understood in 1995, I understood very well why she was chosen for the honor. She was a storied professor in Texas at the University of Texas in Austin, And the theme of the conference was what we then called multiculturalism. It was an innocent time. I expected from this address a fluent summary of her academic journey and scholarly contribution that would make me understand the Maya. And I do remember Linda giving such an account and feeling a little bit lost myself in the flow of Mayan time, names, and monuments. But most of what she told us in a very engaging way was very surprising to me. And I have never forgotten 3 things about the speech. First, she did not start out her professional life as an art historian, let alone a Mayanist. Having been born in Nashville, she had worked hard to become an artist and teacher in Ohio. And then from 1968 to 1980, she taught painting and drawing with great dedication at the University of South Alabama. She described herself as a fair to middling painter who relished being a jack of all trades in a small department in what she also called a 2nd or 3rd tier university. These things I did not remember, but I found her address, thank you CAA, in an early generation PDF of CAA News. It's still legible. The second surprise was that she became a Mayanist working with the king of Palenque, material like that, by a serendipitous act of self-definition. In 1970, when she'd been teaching for a while as an artist, on a spontaneous Christmas vacation to Mexico, where she and her husband had never been, she made a detour to Palenque, fell in love with the monuments and especially the images on them, and extended her stay by 2 weeks to become immersed in these images. And when she returned to Mobile, Alabama, she turned herself into a Mayanist with great dedication, pursuing the decoding of Mayan script with fellow scholars, and gaining support for her studies and really for her ideas and her findings, despite very serious opposition from the field, from all of those scholars who had, like Kubler, frankly, who had never believed that this script was decodable. Eventually, Linda obtained her PhD from the University of Texas and became a storied professor, as I've said. Now, these 2 things, the fact that she was an artist turned art historian and that she had made these epic discoveries, would have sufficed to produce a CAA Convocation address for the ages. Who has 2 careers like that, as an artist and an art historian? Who wills such a reinvention of herself and then upends a field almost single-handedly? But there was a third startling thing in the speech that I remembered best, actually. In closing, Linda spoke passionately about her enthusiasm for the people she had met in Mayan heritage communities in Mexico, and the work that she had been doing with others for years, not on her own, she made clear, to teach the lost language in these communities and help them gain access to their own deep histories. It was the first time I had heard a scholar speak with such conviction and evidence about the direct impact of her scholarly work on times past, on a living community in a society. And she did all that while giving credit to hundreds of collaborators along the way from many different disciplines, organizations, and walks of life. So what has remained with me from her convocation address was this sense of a life of purpose that was neither linear nor predetermined, but open to new ideas and vital quirky impulses, and also driven by a willingness to do really hard work and find fellow travelers to do it with wherever she could find them, and to do nothing by halves. Linda Sheila was an artist, a teacher and a scholar, and a community builder too. As a convocation speaker, she manifested CAA's multidisciplinary and internationalizing direction that it was following at the time in a way few others could. When she died only 3 years later from cancer, just 55 years old, think of that, I felt a loss even though we never met. And I learned that she had taught up to a few days before her death. It was a little intimidating to remember that address and look it up. And I am not an artist, and I do not have a conversion story like Linda's, let alone a scholarly contribution of such epic scale. Nevertheless, I hope I share a little in her sense of adventure, her propensity to try to make a purposeful contribution at whatever phase of life you are, even if it means going off one's expected path, and in her belief that you can only do something useful by working in community with people who bring skills and experiences often radically different from your own. Part 2. Thank you. Part 2 for Linda. For Linda. Part 2. A life of unexpected turns. I became an art historian for no other reason than that I wanted to know more about the history of art. Going to graduate school without a clear idea of what to do with a PhD is, of course, a crazy index of privilege and also of the confidence of the academy in the 1980s. That too was an innocent time. I felt I had to do it because I had not majored in art history, even though I went to Williams College. Imagine that. At Williams, I tried astronomy, but I couldn't really do the math. And I mostly studied history and political science and loved it. Having grown up in the Netherlands during the growth of the European economic community in the 60s and 70s, I was obsessed with the idea that economic integration could prevent the horrors of war and genocide that had ravaged the continent. And I wrote a history thesis on the idea of European Union that then seemed a settled matter. Imagine that. But in my junior year, I took Introduction to the History of Painting just because everyone else had done it. The scales fell off my eyes that there was good, even brilliant and fascinating painting before Rembrandt and Vermeer. I soon realized that art offered a completely different way into history, a live one, into history as dealing with a truly vital set of objects often still with us in our space and time, and often exceeding their value as documentary evidence somehow. The teacher who taught me that, on the left here, she never liked to be photographed much, this is Zurka Filipczak. Zurka was a fantastic teacher, and she recognized my accent at one point and invited me to read recent Dutch art history with her when I showed an interest. And she told me on the right about a stunning new book just out by a Svetlana Alpers. And I could hardly believe, as we went through this material, that you could spend a life thinking and writing about such things and get paid for it. And I felt a yearning to think like scholars like them and like Urban Panofsky and Julius Held, whom we also read. And I yearned to understand the miracle that this great Dutch 17th century art that was recognized as something special in the world had emerged, and I wanted to know more about it. A few years later, I was very lucky to find an extraordinary mentor in Egbert Haverkamp-Begeman. I chose to work with Egbert because he was a doyen of Netherlandish art studies, but also because, like me, he had come to the United States, if many years earlier, from the Netherlands to find a more dynamic academic landscape than available in the Netherlands at the time. But I have to say that in retrospect, my going to the Institute of Fine Arts was overdetermined. There were other excellent scholars of Dutch art in great institutions, but the IFA was the only profoundly European construct among them. And it was in the greatest American city for art, New York. In the 1930s, you probably know the story, the Institute's rise as a top-notch graduate school was directly connected to the arrival of refugee art historians who found temporary or permanent welcome at the IFA, of course, like Panofsky, like Richard Krautheimer, like Julius Held, who was there for a spell, and others, including, fascinatingly, the young Louise Bourgeois, who then came as Mrs. Robert Goldwater. Robert Goldwater was the Institute's professor of modern as well as African art. In Europe, all of these scholars and artists had enjoyed close relationships with museum collections. Those were their labs. And the Institute too thrived as it does today on physical and intellectual proximity to the growing museums of New York City. Now, I didn't know all of that when I began to work with Egbert, but he taught me and my fellow students these histories in the broadest sense. And he made us understand the connections between these larger forces and movements of history and the age-old international character of art, the traveling character of art, trade, excavations, museums, universities, and scholarship. His wisdom, to me, seemed derived less from his fabled connoisseurship, although we learned from it, or from his magnificent Wunderkammer library. Mostly it seemed to derive to me from his unusual life path. Having grown up in the Soviet Union because his father, a Dutch engineer, was one of the utopians who went to build the Salvation State in the Soviet Union until Stalin made that impossible. A strong sense of social justice never left Egbert, even if it could seem to me oddly divorced sometimes from the community of great New York collectors and dealers and art institutions that he navigated so well. What he and the Institute gave me, and I think many of my peers, was a flexible sense of what an art historian might do. It's what Denise was talking about. Art historians can do lots of things. As students, we were research assistants, interns in museums and excavations, TAs at NYU. We supplemented our fellowships with gigs at art fairs, galleries, auction houses, and magazines. We could see the graduates just ahead of us thrive in museum and university jobs, in the trade and in corporate collections. And all of these career paths were acceptable at the Institute because people like Robert Rosenblum told us they were. And he was moonlighting at the Guggenheim all that time, actually. I myself was drawn to scholarship and teaching, but as a research assistant at the Met in various capacities, I learned to see the museum as my laboratory. And indeed, my first publication, as an assistant to Egbert, who had roped me into it, was a bespoke, expensive Christie's catalog on one painting, Rembrandt's St. Peter, Repentant. We knocked ourselves out for that publication. The work didn't sell, but I don't think it was on us. I think the reserve was too high. Now, so when I entered art history as a discipline and a profession, I was rather lucky. The supply and demand equation, the supply and demand equation for art historians, especially in traditional European art that I represented, was still reasonably balanced. The history of Dutch art was a thriving field, exciting and animated by international debates unleashed by Alpers, David Friedberg, and Simon Schama. I loved my first job at Rutgers University, and I pursued the path of a tenured professor with great energy. That path was wide open to me. I had no doubt of it in a way, even though, of course, all the anxieties were there, but it was wide open to me, not only because the field I was in was hot, and because I worked hard, although I think I did those things. I recognized only later that my path was eased considerably by my personal history, even by my accent, and by my appearance, all of which must have seemed very Dutch. But something unexpected happened to me in New Jersey. Rutgers is a wonderful, resolutely public institution, and most students who took art history did it just to meet a humanities requirement with the least amount of effort. I had to find a way to talk about art in a way that these students from many different walks of life, could do something with it and take something away, stay awake in class. When it came time for me to teach Art 101, which we all had to do, I was saved, literally, by my co-teacher, for my own expertise, really, by my co-teacher, Seth Gopin, who was the Pied Piper of intro at Rutgers. He taught me how to hold the attention of 500 students at lunchtime. We called it darkness at noon. And he did it. He did it by recreating something of the aesthetic experience of old art through new technology. He was innovative, through music and immersive storytelling. Once a student asked him why she should even bother with art history, and he had such a simple answer. He said, "It is a really useful thing to study because people in all sorts of positions you're going to encounter throughout your life want to know about it, they want to be with it, and that would show you what a value to society and your career art could be." I thought it was a heretical, crass answer, but I have found it to be true and a great disposition for fundraising. Once, a student who was struggling in the Northern Renaissance course I taught said she actually loved it, even though she was running a C that she thought was fair. I asked her why she liked it, and she said, I am from a devout Catholic family, but most of my relatives, she went like this, most of my relatives are from the African American evangelical community, so we don't have a large group of people we know in the church. And no one has ever explained to me why we have Mass and what the Eucharist means, and why we see these pictures of Jesus on the cross. But now I understand because you've explained it, and it helps my faith. That was the first time that I began to understand that most students in a classroom don't look for expertise. They seek the possibility to connect to knowledge that they are curious about and that can seem very distant. And they seek connection to people who can help them learn and get on in life. And I began to see also there that anyone can cherish art in their lives for whatever reasons. And that it is a responsibility and an opportunity for art historians to activate that potential, however we do it. After Rutgers, my art historical life brought me to the Clark Art Institute, back to the IFA, and eventually the Mellon Foundation. And it largely has taken me out of the history of Netherlandish art, although I still love to nerd out on it just as much as anybody, and I have time sometimes to do it. But the most unexpected blessing in my academic life has been the one that my art historical colleagues have found the strangest. In fact, I myself think it's the strangest. My decision to accept the opportunity to help create New York University, Abu Dhabi. I was asked to lead the startup team for NYU Abu Dhabi from 2007 as a founding provost, a provost without a university, which is a great job. I was a provost without a university and without a faculty, but we're building it. And I did that from 2007 until we opened in 2010. But then I came back to Abu Dhabi 9 years later, after that time at the Mellon Foundation, to become the Vice Chancellor for the last 5 years before I went to the Guggenheim. So I've been there twice, so to speak. I had zero intention ever to build a university, let alone one in the MENA region. And I essentially did it because the person who asked me to do it saw something in me that I had not seen myself as an asset. I think this is often how our students or how people find the most baffling but meaningful assignments they may get in their lives. The person who asked me is not the man on the left, it's the man on the right. Our president, John Sexton, here in conversation with Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who was then the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, today the president of the UAE. Our president, John Sexton, there on the right, asked me to lead this effort because I had a personal history in international education and the liberal arts, something I took for granted. After he had appointed me at the Institute of Fine Arts in 2002, he constantly started saying to me, Mariët, what are you doing for our university? I would roll out all the great things I was doing with the faculty and for our students at the IFA, getting us out of our traditional European skin that was also my own, making our offer more global, interdisciplinary, and of our time. And then he would say, but what else? NYU is the global university, the best global university, and you can do so much more for it and for humankind. You are so international. I mean, it was true, but it never occurred to me. Long story short, because I spent time in Turkey and Egypt supporting our excavations and our research in Islamic art, I had spent a few months in the region, and I knew 10 words of Arabic. And that was 10 more than any other dean of NYU. My family was willing to give this idea a try, and we went. I will only briefly summarize here what I learned from building NYU Abu Dhabi together with hundreds of talented, interesting, and driven people from NYU, from the Gulf, and from around the world. Many of you know this is one of the most important among them. the late Hilary Ballon, a beloved member of the CAA community, whom John Sexton allowed me to recruit from Columbia as my deputy, even though that meant 2 blonde women, art historians, were going to try to build this thing, which seemed very unlikely to many people. But it was great, and a great partnership. And together with Hilary, with John, and many others, we recruited a great vice-chancellor, Al Bloom, the president of Swarthmore, which was a great boon to us. This is what we can say about NYU Abu Dhabi today. Here's a few shots of Rafael Vignoli's campus, one of his other masterpieces, I think, one of his greatest works, and the only campus Rafael ever designed completely. We opened NYU Abu Dhabi in 2010 to 140 brave undergraduate students who took a chance on us. Today, it is a university in and of Abu Dhabi, the capital of the United Arab Emirates. And it is a university in and of NYU, a school of NYU. At its beating heart is a liberal arts college for the world, with 2,000 students, and this is a totally randomly generated snapshot of them, 2,000 students from more than 100 countries and as many language communities. There is no ethnic majority. More than 20% do come from the UAE, and we're very proud of that. And the others from all continents except Antarctica. We select students for their intercultural drive and their utopian sense of purpose, quite apart from how well they did in class, although we study that too. The curriculum is in the American liberal arts mode, but it is fully decentralized out of the West. Freshly designed majors cut across the sciences, engineering, social sciences, art, humanities, and now also business and law. A quarter of our undergraduates major in the arts and humanities, 25%. Think about that. The arts and humanities are popular in some parts of the world. On and around the college, we built PhD programs in STEM fields that drive a lot of research there. And we recently launched a very popular MFA, the only really one in the far region, and an MBA that is also unique to the region. And this unparalleled learning community has now graduated 3,000 students to date, including 24 Rhodes Scholars and a dozen or so Fulbrights among them, and many other accolades. It has a faculty of more than 400, with 3 Nobel Prize winners among them. This all sounds like a totally boosterish success story, I'm sure, but there is much to be joyful and proud about, to be sure. I tell it all because in 2007, all of this was an unlikely and controversial prospect. The idea of granting NYU degrees in a country without a history of academic freedom in the Western mold raised a few eyebrows, shall we say. My NYU colleagues, I always felt, legitimately asked us whether a research campus in Abu Dhabi could be representative of NYU. They would often ask me, how can you be sure that we can do everything in Abu Dhabi that we can in New York? My standard answer was, if you're asking whether we will have academic freedom and NYU-style campus life on our Abu Dhabi campus, the answer is yes. We had totally de-risked and worked that through with our partners. But then I would say, should we not rather ask something else? Shouldn't we ask what it is we can do in Abu Dhabi that we can't on Washington Square? And we found that flipping this lens of the question was fruitful because many faculty actually relished the chance to design new majors and a core curriculum focused on big ideas, interdisciplinary knowledge for the 21st century, and especially field experience connected to the crossroads location of the country between Europe, Africa, and Asia. Envisioning and building a new kind of university in an incomparably hospitable culture, and it is hospitable, has been the most rewarding part of my life in higher education. Apart from the deep satisfaction of seeing such bright, interested, and dynamic young people flourish, who would never have had, many of them would never have had similar opportunities in their home countries. We have a lot of financial aid. My dislocatedness renewed also my interest in teaching and scholarship. After working there with the local landscape designer, this is our first campus, we had one before the Vignoli campus to open quickly. And I worked with a local landscape designer to create this first campus garden for NYU Abu Dhabi. And doing that, I realized why the region had been the source of the Garden of Eden as the site of the origin story for Judaism and Christianity. It is so dry and difficult. The paradise is a real gift there. In Holland, there always would have been another garden around the corner if you got kicked out. I never made the connection. Now, this belated recognition drew me to study the role of, made me curious about Islam, and more curious than I already was, and drew me to the study of the role of paradise in the Quran and the history of Muslim people and their garden making. I began to teach Gardens of Eden as the Garden of Eden is interpreted and represented by peoples of the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Their traditions all share the story, as it turns out, but it takes on very divergent theological and cultural force in each of the three. Teaching Eden in this way to dozens of students of wildly varying faiths, or none at all, as they would tell me, and students with different aesthetic and design proclivities in what's essentially a core course, I found that this time I really did learn more from my students than they could from me alone. So I share this because in this moment we're in of new nativism, anti-immigrant fervor, and closing borders, I believe that universities and scholars and artists will miss out on fundamental learning and necessary research if they will not engage in unfamiliar places until those places are precisely like our country. Maybe we want them to be a little bit different. Thousands of people over the past 17 years who have made NYU Abu Dhabi their community have found the wisdom of Zora Neale Hurston and her great motto, you've got to go there to know there. You've got to go there to learn and not to think that you're just going to tell them what's what. The last part. What now, what next? The Guggenheim in a deglobalizing age. I would never have left NYU Abu Dhabi for another university. That would have been promiscuous and deeply ungrateful after all that that great university has brought into my life since 1987. And as unlikely as it may sound, I would not have left NYU Abu Dhabi for any museum other than the Guggenheim. Now, I love many museums, and many of them map better onto my expertise. But the Guggenheim idea connects with my experience as no other museum organization does today. First, there's always a little bit of nostalgia, that homesickness for the past that tends to grow with age. When I went to Williams College in 1980, my mother wanted to bring me there, but not before showing me New York, a city she loved. Like most Dutch people of her generation, she was a child of American liberation in Amsterdam and of the Marshall Plan. And the very first morning in Manhattan, she took me to the one art museum we really thought she had to see first, the Guggenheim. Not the Met, not MoMA, not the Frick, sorry, the Guggenheim. Go figure that. I was surprised, of course, that this bizarre building was even a museum. And I relished the spiraling ramps, as all visitors do, once we got inside. I was also amazed to see Kandinsky, Klee, and Picasso. They have European art in America. I really was naive, and we didn't have the internet and so on. My mother was thrilled that I liked her favorite museum, and she said she wanted me to see it because only in America, and really only in New York, would they build such a thing. And I think that to be true. And so the circle, along with the building, is round. But a round circle is never a good reason to take a challenging job that many others, let's face it, could also do. You should only take such an assignment if you believe in the institution and you have a real chance of doing something useful for its mission and something good together with its people. As the Guggenheim emerged as a potential place for me, I saw that its history, its values, its presence, and its future would connect plausibly with the things that I care and actually know something about. Since its founding in 1937, the Solomon R. Guggenheim Foundation, that predated this building, of course, by 22 years, since that time, the foundation has promoted enjoyment and understanding of the most innovative art of the day, and it has collected and preserved this art, and continues to do so, so that future generations may know it, and tell any number of new stories about it and through it. And like NYU, the Guggenheim is a private institution with a public mission, fueled by the propulsive energy of our home city. And it is one that also has long believed in going there to know there. I think you probably know it, but we are not just one single museum. You've heard it a little bit. On the left there, you have Solomon Guggenheim, Hilla Rebay, who convinced him to collect the art of today, the artist who would come from Europe herself in 1928, with, of course, Frank Lloyd Wright. And on the right, after they got going and they opened up museum, meanwhile, Peggy Guggenheim on the right was putting together her amazing collection, not of the abstract art so much favored by Solomon and Hilla, but of surrealist art that she favored, along with the artists, so very much herself. And those were bearing, that's a remarkable history because, of course, although Peggy Guggenheim for a long time wasn't planning to do anything much more with the Guggenheim in New York or her family there, in the end, the director Tom Messer convinced her in the 1960s to come back to the family and give her collection and palazzo to the Guggenheim Foundation, which she did, and she left, and so that's fully a part. And so in 1979, 1980, when 1979 she passed, in 1980 when we started to open the museum as a Guggenheim Museum, we all of a sudden were truly again a transnational, bicontinental institution. And once that had happened, much later, Tom Krenz, a Williams College graduate and the director of the Williams College Museum of Art when I was a student there, notched the institution's international aspirations up a level. Many plans were envisioned and some even opened, from Berlin to Las Vegas to Soho, and then closed, but they changed us in interesting ways. And of course, the most famous one opened and stayed open and is an absolutely thriving institution, the Guggenheim Bilbao, which opened in 1997 in one of Frank Gehry's truly greatest buildings. It has become so famous that an entire theory of urban redevelopment is named the Bilbao effect, even though it only has worked once in Bilbao. On the basis of its success, Krenz worked with the cultural authorities in Abu Dhabi to agree to build Guggenheim Abu Dhabi in another of what will be one of Gehry's truly greatest buildings. The Guggenheim Abu Dhabi, of which you see the render here, was conceived in 2007. The Guggenheim and Abu Dhabi agreed to this plan in the very same summer in 2007 when we opened our Abu Dhabi chapter at NYU. Now we look forward to the completion of this extraordinary project and collection and programs in the next 2 years. Mark your calendars when we tell you to do so. In a way then, the Guggenheim, I think, could be thought of as the NYU of modern and contemporary art museums, enacting its mission of connecting people to art and place in works of extraordinary architecture in 4 beautifully maritime cities with crossroads histories, and each of them with a deep commitment to the role of art in our lives. They are local and global, and connected to each other. Today, the Guggenheim is not a solar system where New York is the sun with satellites orbiting around that beautiful Fifth Avenue building. It is a fully connected constellation of 4 bright and differently colored stars, each with its own energy and its characteristic spectrum and radiance. We learn from each other, we work together, we also leave each other in peace as we need to. It is early days for my tenure at the Guggenheim, but I can already say how thrilled I am to be back full-time with art and its histories and the people who care so much about it and know so much about it. These very things that I wanted to know more about, that set me on my path in higher education, philanthropy, and museums. A final thought. It is not an easy time for art museums or any knowledge institutions that are critical to civil society, as our institutions represented here are. Across the Guggenheim, we will follow Meme's call. We will stay focused on our mission of connecting people to visionary art and to each other in inspiring places. We continue to believe in the free exchange of ideas across borders of all sorts and in the power of artists to help us see and give voice to thoughts and emotions yet to be expressed or discovered. We will continue to learn from our 4 different sites and their communities, and we will share out that learning as widely as we can through art with anyone who is interested and comes in peace. Excuse me. I could never have predicted or charted my meandering path through art history, education, and museums when I left the Netherlands to learn new things and new places and new people. But I am so thankful for all that art history and that this country has afforded me. Until the end of his long, 94 years long life, my mentor and friend, Egbert Begeman, believed in this country's cacophonous ability to generate ideas that are useful, to create great institutions we care about and want to belong to, and to shape great leaders. He and I shared a faith in America's resilience, even though we always complained about it too. We also shared a birthday. Most years, we had a ritual celebration of that day, which he always reminded me was also Michelangelo's birthday. I would arrange lunch, and he would give me a book from his collection. Our last lunch was in 2016, a year before his death. When he gave me the book, I was startled to recognize the very same edition of Democracy in America that I had read in college. And sometimes now, when I worry what does come next for the country, for the world, I think of Egbert and I read a little bit in it. And I recommend to all of you to do it because actually it will give you hope. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
Now that's a convocation speech. Thank you so much, Mariët. It's wonderful. Thank you, Denise and Lara and everyone for joining us for convocation and for your inspiring remarks. It's been wonderful. Before we close tonight, I'd like to let you know that CAA will begin accepting submissions for the 114th Annual Conference on March 15th. The deadline for submissions is April 25th. And I'm pleased to announce that the next conference will take place at the Hilton Chicago, February 18 to 21st, 1926. Thank you again. Why am I saying 1926? I think, Mariët, you've had an effect on me. 2026. Thank you again to conference sponsors AMA Journal of Ethics, Blick Art Materials, the Dedalus Foundation, the Getty Foundation, Intellect Press, John Mitchell Foundation, J Store, the Milton and Sally Avery Foundation, Rutledge, Taylor and Francis, Sotheby's Institute of Art, the Terra Foundation, and the University of California Press. Thanks also to our book and trade fair exhibitors. Thank you to the CAA Annual Conference Committee, Committee Chair Dr. Elisa Graff, who came in mid-cycle and hit the ground running. And of course, the Council of Readers for curating another phenomenal conference program. Thank you to the New York Hilton Midtown Conference Direct, Encore, Confex, Bright Key, and the various interns and hybrid room monitors who are already working so hard to make sure the event is a success and runs smoothly for our attendees. This year, I'm extra excited to report we even have a talented high school intern. So delighted. Thank you to CAA's 12 professional committees, the Publications Committee, and editorial boards for your contributions all year long. Thank you to CAA's Board of Directors for your continued partnership, and especially Board President Denise Baxter. And to everyone listening tonight, please vote in the 2025 board elections. Visit our website and cast your vote by Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Voting is one of the best ways to shape the future of the association. CAA is comprised of a 9% full-time staff, 2 part-time staffers and a consultant. If you're here, CAA staff, please stand up. Thank you. Thank you. These very few human beings, considering all CAA accomplishes each year through our publications, grants, and awards, and of course our annual conference, it's due to them. Thank you to Paul Skeef, who, after retiring in 2023, to nearly 25 years of working at CAA, as CAA's Assistant Director of Institutional Events, has been consulting for us for the past 2 conferences. His dedication and expertise remain invaluable to us. And of course, Mira Freelander, Senior Manager of Annual Conference, who leads the conference production efforts and is a force to be reckoned with, a force of nature, and she deserves a round of applause. We wouldn't be sitting here tonight without Mira, and we could certainly not deliver without her. Thank you to Editorial Director Eugenia Bell, who is the brilliant staff member in charge of our 4 publications. One-man juggernaut, one-woman juggernaut, one-person juggernaut, who is in charge of our 4 publications, along with editorial assistants Annalene De Leon, who notably administers CAA reviews. I cannot say enough about this incredible publications duo. Thank you. Thank you to Carly Buckley, Manager of Grants and Awards and Director of the incomparable CAA Get International program, which is such a vital component of CAA annual conferences each year. Carly juggles so much in service to our members. Thank you, Carly. Thank you to Abdul Mohammed, Manager of Finance and Administrative Services, for his commitment, and to our webmaster, Alison Walters, for working across departments to support this conference here tonight. Thank you to new staff members, Javon Peters, Senior Manager of Member Services and Membership Strategy, and Casey Tromer, Senior Manager of Communications, Marketing and Media Strategy. We are so happy you are all here. Thank you, Haley Sanchez, who has been a social media intern for quite some time and has recently been promoted to social media and research assistant at CAA. Thanks, Haley. And finally, thank you to my senior leadership team, Director of Finance and Administration, Prakesh Kuluri, and CAA's Director of Strategic Planning, Diversity and Governance, Megan Donahue. She's the person you see walking everywhere and everywhere all the time. Thank you to all conference participants and attendees, both remote and in person. Please join us for the CAA Distinguished Scholar Session tomorrow evening and CAA Annual Artist Interviews on Friday evening in person or via live stream. Check the conference app or CAA website for details. Above all, thank you to our affiliated societies, institutional members, and individual members for your contribution to CAA and your service to the visual arts field. Again, thank you for being here tonight and enjoy your conference. Thank you.